Welcome to Movies with My Dad, episode I can't remember. 7?
I think it's 4.
Hold it up to your face.
I think it's 4.
It's not episode 4, is it?
I don't know. We did Tombstone, we did Wonder Woman, we did Godzilla.
And then we did A New Hope.
So 5.
Yeah, it's episode
5 plus our dislikes.
Right. So for those of you just joining us, the way that we always format this is, well, the first thing I should say is we review movies about the generational gap in between us. So you're talking like classic movies from the 80s, which my dad was obviously a part of, and then all of the modern movies made today that are either can stand up to those movies or in their shadow or whatever's in between. We do bad and good movies from each generation. We like to explore the difference and how people enjoy them. So the way that we always format this is we do our first impressions right off the bat, because it's always fresh in our mind, because we typically do this right after we watch the movie. Then we go into what we liked about it, just to keep it positive, and if that's all people want to see and they don't really want to get too negative about it, they can just tune out after that. Because after positive, we go negative, and this is our chance to just rip the movie apart, nitpick like crazy, do whatever we want to do, and just all the negative bashing we could possibly do. And then we always end it with how we can make the movie better, or with classic movies, how could you make it today?
That's what we try to stick to.
Yeah, it's a guideline.
It's not a rule. It's not a hard and fast rule.
The first impressions is kind of whatever you want to do. You know what I mean? So, might as well get right into it then from there. We watched Dances with Wolves this time. So I've actually never seen this movie. You've seen this multiple times?
Yes. So this is the kind of the point of what we're doing is to bridge that generation gap of movies that I liked. And this one is kind of special because it's a movie that my dad really enjoyed when I was, your age or younger. Came out in 1990, I believe. So I was 15 years old. And it was one of those instant classics. It had an old school feel to it. And just a different flow of the movie. So what were your first impressions?
See, that was just it. So when did this movie come out exactly?
1990.
Yeah, see, it feels way older than the way it's actually filmed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, it's a World War II or
Civil War.
Post-Civil War era movie.
Right.
About the frontier and the expanse into it. So it kind of has that vibe to it. But what'd you think about the pace?
See, that was my thing. The funny thing about this story is that this is a 3-hour long movie. It's the 90s version of Endgame.
3 hour and 1 minute.
3 hour and 1 minute, yeah. But the thing is, and the thing I wanted to bring up as well is when it comes to like all the characters in this movie and the way it's plotted out and all the scenes, everything plays a part. You know what I mean? There's no like dead weight. So I'll save most of that for the positive because I kind of wanted to get in depth there. But it's just the pace. Yeah, it's a slow movie, but every scene carries some kind of weight to it and brings like something new. You know what I mean? So it's very. I really liked this movie. It was a lot of fun to watch. There were some parts I could have gone without that I'll get into later. But yeah, for those of you that have seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But it's so funny because I was expecting this movie to drag on a little bit. I was expecting it to be kind of slow like most classics are, but it's really not. And what I wanted to say was there's such a lack of like the flashiness that's used in like movies today. Like it really doesn't let you know it's a movie a whole lot, if that makes sense. It's like you're just.
It almost feels like a documentary.
Yeah, it almost feels like a book, or something
someone's
like that.
reading you a story. Yeah.
Yeah, like someone. Well, technically, yeah, because it's narrated with him writing in his journal half the time.
Yeah.
But I really like that part of it. To me, it's less of like a movie with like the whole rising climax and everything with the format of how you would film something, but it's more of just storytelling, and that's what I really like about this movie.
Yeah, I fell in love with it the first time I watched it. I thought it was great. Just the expanse of the movie. The whole thing probably takes place when you're talking about filming and the scope and the set and everything else of about 300 acres of someone's backyard in the middle of Kansas. I don't know wherever these plains and valleys and rivers, but you immediately get immersed in what it would be like to live in that time, and wrapped up in it, kind of captivated by it. The survival of it, the survival element, against the elements, against people trying to, take what you need to survive, just fortifying your home or your lodge, wherever you happen to be, and making sure you have enough supplies through the winter, and then just all the downtime that we aren't accustomed to in our lifestyles now.
Yeah, I mean, there's really not much more I could say about first impressions without getting into the positive section, because this is a very in-depth movie. It's very, what's the word? It carries a lot of weight. I keep saying that a lot. It's a very deep movie to kind of...
It's moving.
There's a lot of symbolism in it. There's a lot of introspection, a lot of stuff that'll make you question how you, like, your own personal biases, how you feel about other people, what you thought about history. It makes you kind of reflect on everything. You know what I mean? Because this movie is all about showing multiple perspectives and the reactions that multiple people have to different cultures and different situations. So to flow that into the positive.
Well, amazing that that's still relevant 31 years later.
Yeah, no kidding.
Even more relevant 31 years later.
I mean, all those stories kind of relate to each other. You know what I mean? I mean, we still teach that in history. You want to talk about prejudices or anything, and it's the same when it comes to any time in history. Like not completely, but it's almost like a parable. You know what I mean? I don't know, like, you look like biblical parables. I don't know what it's like to be given 10 talents, but I can still understand the story. Yeah. you know what I mean? But
it's still relatable after 30 years.
Exactly.
It still works.
So this movie kind of works out like a parable, which goes back to that storytelling kind of thing.
Yeah.
But so, like, to flow into the positive, what I really liked about this movie was it had a very, especially at first, a kind of, well, not in the opening scene, but after the opening scene, which was a really cool, somewhat kind of classic war movie scene that you would see, like, kind of like reminiscent of Braveheart or
it's a Civil War standoff movie,
stuff like that. But after that, it's a very mellow, evenly paced or slowly paced, kind of just softer movie, especially for a very long time. A lot of very pretty backgrounds and a lot of really good connections. And what's funny is with just one guy there for half the time, with John just sitting in the fort with nothing but his horse and the wolf for the first, like, 20 minutes of that whole part, they managed to keep you into it. You know what I mean? When it's just him there. And I loved all the parts with him narrating from his journal. It was I really love it when movies do stuff like that.
Well, when you talk about character development and caring about, we've talked about that in the past, where it's hard to make you care about a character. You immediately feel what he's feeling from the very first scene.
Yeah.
He's on, and sorry, there's spoilers, but if you haven't seen this movie in the last 30 years, that's on you.
Why would somebody watch a movie review for something they haven't seen?
I don't know. So, anyway, the very first scene, he's sitting on a makeshift wartime Civil War hospital table, like a mobile tent, and they're talking about having to cut his leg off, and he doesn't want to lose his leg, so he just guts through it, puts his boot back on, and goes to let the other side kill him.
Well, he books it before the doctor can come back.
Yeah, before they can take his leg. And you're immediately just captivated by this character and what he's feeling. The emotional depth right out the gate is there. And this is not a high. There's no real big highs. There's no real big lows. There are a couple intense moments. But otherwise, like you said, it's a very even-keeled movie across the board. But it has a lot of heart and a lot lot of emotional climax to the movie.
Right. And one thing that I wanted to bring up, and I was thinking about this a lot today, because we weren't able to do this one right after the movie. We get busy, but
It was late.
yeah. What I really liked about this movie was every character, every little side character, even if they only had like a few lines, you get a feel, and this is also kind of a touch to the actors, of their backstory and their motivation and that kind of thing, and their character in general. So like Smiles a lot. The little kid, you barely see him in the movie at all, but you get such like a great little arc with him where he freezes twice, but then he finally takes action like the third time. And then you have all of the in the ending scene when he comes back, and it's all of the Civil War soldiers. Each one, they've got like their personality written all over their face. You know what I mean? You get a feel for their character the moment you see them. With like a
you immediately know who they are and
right.
what role they have to play.
The movie does a really good job of just like in the actors as well. There's every character you see, the look, like you know who they are just by looking at them. It's very, very easy to follow like who the characters are in this movie, and each character has their own specific little arc that they go through in this movie. It's
just through character design, costume design,
right.
Everything about the casting, it's really done brilliantly as far as knowing. You talk about trying to remove prejudice with this movie. That's what that's the whole point behind it.
Right.
But you immediately recognize the players for who they are in this movie.
Yeah. But what I like about this movie is that it finds that balance where it's between like you can read somebody, you can understand like some of their intentions or who they are or what they're feeling. But what I love about this movie, what I meant by all the character arcs, is that everybody goes through some kind of development in this movie. What's called Wind in His Hair, the guy who was the least accepting of him out of all of them, turning out to be his best friend in the end.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that scene a lot today when John had to go away to keep the others safe, and he goes on the hill and he starts yelling at him that he's always going to be his friend.
Mm-hmm.
It's just funny to think, because this movie, partially because it's so long, but it does a really good job of like, there were a few times that I was watching it, and a couple times I was thinking, I'm like, I can't believe that these were the same people in the opening scene.
Well, yeah, the whole ending moment there, it parallels the opening between them.
Yeah.
And I didn't bring that up last night because I wanted to see if you found it for yourself. I mean, it's obvious, but
yeah,
when he first charges up to him, he's showing him how brave he is, and that he's I'm not afraid of you, and challenging him,
mm-hmm.
and then that he gets past all of it and becomes his best friend, and just his view of life, the way he looks at someone new coming into his life, it was just really cool. It's almost like the antagonist in the movie is hate, and the protagonist is love and acceptance.
Well,
there is no good guy and bad guy in it.
Well, what I love about it is the fact that it's not like whitey bad or Indian bad at any point. It shows both of them with their own prejudices. You know what I mean? Like you get all the soldiers from the other side. They're like they don't say Indian, they say Injun.
Yeah.
And they were all like originally he's like he would literally say he's a white man, he's less than us, and things like that. And you watch both of them get past that, and they just don't care anymore.
Yeah.
And he's like and what I love is what Tim Bear says near the end of the movie. He's like, you're not this, you're not that. There's just a Sioux man. I don't know how to pronounce it. Is it Sioux? Sioux?
Yeah.
There's just a Sioux man sitting in front of me. And I really like that, where they get past all of it to the point where they just don't care anymore, and they show that like both of them had their racial prejudices. Both of them had their assumptions about the other.
They had justifiable mistrust based on previous interactions with a group of people.
Yeah.
You have people just coming onto their land, not understanding their ways, their culture, killing them, taking their stuff.
Yeah.
Like that scene where they're hunting the buffalo and then just leaving them, taking the carcasses, or taking the pelts and the skins, and that's it. That's it's so, if you were to see that, and that goes against everything you've ever known and been taught, just what an offense that would be. But the people doing it don't get it. They don't understand the depth of what they're doing wrong. Or just trying to take your family across the prairie and being attacked by a group, and you don't even know what you're doing wrong. And then there's mistrust on both sides. So I just think it's a wonderful movie for kind of getting it, driving at the heart of, like you said, prejudice and understanding. And I think it's a very pivotal movie, or was for a lot of people back when it came out, and helping it's one of those that resonates and sticks with you and kind of molds how you see people and how you judge people.
Yeah, I really think this is one of those movies that everybody should see at least once in their life.
Yeah.
And like it'll make you rethink a lot of assumptions like that you have. And I'm not even talking like anything racial here, but just culturally in general. Like with everybody has their own set of biases, their own set of assumptions, and it's completely natural. Everybody has them. But this movie will make you rethink all of them. And you'll see what's really worth keeping around in your head. You know what I mean? You'll see what's just kind of a waste of space, something you shouldn't even be wasting your time thinking about.
Yeah, I think it goes along the same lines, almost the same principle of Breakfast Club. I know that's a weird parallel.
No, that's actually a great parallel.
But it's one of those that I've always felt should be required viewing in junior high.
Well, it's the exact same idea.
6th, 7th, 8th grade should be required viewing a couple of the John Hughes movies, and this, and there's a couple others that I would throw into that. But just as far as respect for the land, he has to clean up the fort, everything that was just dumped and thrown in the water, and everything left behind.
Well, that was its own kind of symbolism, where John, out of all the old soldiers there, was good-hearted amongst them.
Yeah.
He wasn't like a normal soldier. He was a good-hearted man who had higher values than the average soldier, which is why it worked out. And what I wanted to bring up with the Breakfast Club thing was that, and this is the kind of the problem I have with the social media generation. So both of these movies, all the assumptions are built on this wall between them that keeps them from actually sitting down and having a discussion. You know what I mean? With this movie, it's obviously like a war going on, and the threat of either side probably killing you if you step on their territory, so that's a little different. But Breakfast Club is more modernized, where there's a social wall there. You just don't talk to them because they don't do what you do, and they're not.
Yeah, you don't trespass through the social structure that's already there.
Exactly. So my thing what I love in movies, because it's not just me. Everybody hates this. You ever watch a movie where everything could be solved if the protagonist and the antagonist sat down in a room and talked for 10 minutes?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? About like some stupid mistake that got misinterpreted. Everybody hates that. So the good thing about this movie and Breakfast Club, since we're bringing both of them up, which we should do sometime, we're going to have to find a TV edit, is you sit them down in a room long enough to get past that wall and let them actually sit and have a discussion for a while. They realize that they're not different at all.
Yeah, open-minded dialogue.
Right, exactly. And
I think it's a huge message. I mean, it really, there's plenty to say about the depth of this movie and the prose, but it's just such a simple point, and that's the beauty of it. And it runs long, but you don't get bored with it.
No, it just,
the scope, the cinematography of it, just the views. It's very epic in the way they did it, and just very, very stirring to your soul. There's another movie that I watched a long time ago, Legends of the Fall. I mean, it's a hard movie to watch, but it's very stirring for those same reasons, about love and loss and just the epic scale of the early frontier America.
Well, we're on a bit of a time constraint here. We're gonna have to shift into the negative soon enough. So let's
fire away.
You want to make it like our final positive points?
I just think if you can pull off a 3-hour movie with less sleepy downtime than even Endgame, which was
seriously.
3 hours of action-packed movie, this is just a different pace movie. That's all you have to understand that going in.
This has something for the casual moviegoer. It's got something for the hardcore movie fanatics, and it's a very well thought out, very well paced, very well crafted movie.
Well, like you said, the every scene, even if the scene runs long and lingers, it's deliberate.
There's a reason behind it. This is not your average schlup together movie, and I think it's fantastic. And I think it's something everybody should watch at least once in their life. So let's shift over to why maybe you shouldn't watch it. So my thing is that I'll say straight up, and huge spoilers here, just in case anybody has or hasn't seen this movie. There are some animals that you get very attached to in this movie, and you have to watch them get killed in a very I wouldn't say horrific, but a very sad, tragic, and semi-horrific fashion. Where I'm watching it, and I'm just like, no.
Yeah.
Like, and it's hard to watch, and that
it's all the more reason for him to walk away.
Yeah.
From who he was and the people that he was with.
See, that's the thing. It's kind of a bad argument to make for the negative, and I brought this up in Tombstone.
It's just hard to watch.
You gotta bring it up, but you don't get on a drama movie because it was too dramatic. You know what I mean? Yeah. Or a horror movie because it was too scary. The movie was trying to be sad, it was trying to be tragic, and the reason I bring it up is because they did a good job.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about this a lot when I was watching this movie. This is not a movie for the faint of heart. Or this isn't a movie for the overly sensitive or for the faint of heart. It'll be very it will be a very upsetting movie if you know that you're a little sensitive.
If you're an animal lover.
Yeah, or like if you don't have very thick skin.
Yeah.
Like not to be insulting, but like if you get sad or attached really easily, this might not be the movie for you.
Yeah. Well, running back to the positive real quick.
Go ahead.
There was not a single actor that didn't do a knockout job.
Yeah, that's what I was bringing up in the beginning.
No small parts, just small actors. The crazy captain or whoever it was that gave him his assignment.
Oh my gosh, I forgot to bring him up.
Is just phenomenally done. It just...
Okay, that...
You don't even need to know his backstory to understand what's going on with him.
That part was so funny.
Yeah, but it showed its levity. It just... There's the first half hour to an hour of the movie, you're chuckling pretty good at a lot of the stuff that's going on.
There's some pretty funny stuff going on, but it's kind of the calm before the storm.
Yeah. So as far as negatives, I don't have a whole lot of negatives to it.
So the one thing I will bring up then, just to say it right off the beginning, I'll give like a little parent's guide. So so like if you're planning on, especially if you're planning on watching this with your kid, so there is a suicide scene with the crazy captain we were talking about, because obviously he's crazy, and they don't actually show it, but they show like him putting the weapon up to his head, and then it cuts to the outside of the building, and then you hear
it's a PG-13 movie of the 90s, but there's not a whole lot left to the imagination.
Right.
They don't allude to anything. All they do is cut away right before it would become a rated R movie.
It's one of those movies where if it were rated R, it wouldn't be very different.
It would show 3 seconds more of a scene.
Exactly, yeah. So this isn't a very kid-friendly movie, and that goes for
young kid, yeah. It's mature themed.
That goes for like the violence, and but it also goes for so there is some partial nudity in this film.
There's battle scenes that are just cut off right before the edge of graphic. they.
Well, there is one scene where it shows like it full on shows it like right in the opening scene where the guy who's zeroing in on John.
Yes, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
There's one where they show everything right.
But it's not like
it's not super detailed.
It's not by today's standard, not what you would expect, but it's definitely, it's mature. It's mature themed.
The movie
higher than PG-13, I would say. You should be a little older than 13 to be watching it, because then there's also some scenes of passion. We shall say that it verges right on the line of, okay, cover your eyes, don't look away, and they just cut the camera away just before they're showing the nudity. So you see a back, you see someone's back, and you see what they're doing. But honestly, I'm not a fan of that. I don't need to. I get the idea. Just have the door shut in the bedroom, and I get the idea of what you're doing. Have the flap on the tent close, and I get what you're doing. I don't need to see sheets moving. I don't need to see all that. I get it. So if you're going to make a movie that's PG-13, think about having a 13-year-old in there watching it versus what you can get away with by the rating board.
I wouldn't call this a PG-13 movie. I would call this a not rated R movie. That's like the best way I could describe it. Because and to go along those lines, there's kind of like most, I don't know why, but so many movies back in like 80s or apparently very early 90s for this one is there's always a scene when if there's like a male protagonist where it shows like his entire backside of his whole body and just bring that up. There's one scene like that in the early part of this movie that's kind of elongated, where it's kind of the scene goes on for a little while. They don't cut it too short. You're kind of in it for the long haul. But that's kind of it. Other than like I guess the only other thing.
But you get the point. You get the point. About it, that he comes off kind of like a wild man.
A little bit, yeah.
And doesn't care.
But there were more than a few times in this movie where I was just thinking, I'm like, okay, I really didn't need to see that, or they didn't need to show that.
Yeah.
They could have alluded to it, but. Obviously, it probably would have taken away from the real sense of the movie. It probably would have taken away from, the immersion a little bit. Because, like I said in the beginning, this isn't really a movie that reminds you that it's a movie. It doesn't really do that all that much.
Yeah.
So, in the eye of the beholder, whatever you want to say, but unless your kid's like 15, 16 or above, I probably wouldn't let them watch this movie.
Yeah.
And even then, you'll have to cover their eyes at some point.
Well, there's just, there's a scene and we view it a different way than most, and some people might not care, but I think there's other ways around it, and if it's a TV edit, I'm sure it would be even more reduced than it was, which is,
Well, one thing I will say for this movie, was there even any cursing?
No, because it wasn't the language of the day. It wasn't the language of the
era. There was basically no cursing in this movie.
No.
None that I can really remember.
No.
And it kind of helps add to the class a little bit. But if we want, we keep forgetting to go negative. Here's the problem. This is a really good movie.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of downsides. It's very strong.
Yeah,
very strong moving movie. Just be careful.
That's like the biggest negative point I can bring up to paint it with a broad brush is it's not for the faint of heart. It's not for the young, and this isn't. This movie is not afraid to make you a little sad, and it's not afraid to show a little more than most people would. But
it pushes you to the limits of your comfort zone.
Pretty much, yeah.
On a lot of things, mentally, emotionally, and physically.
Yeah, and but as for like actual parts in the movie that were sore spots, there really weren't many. Can't really think of, because
there's no spots that were poorly acted. There were no odd dialogue moments. There were no. It's just
The best way that I like to analogize this is that the word?
I don't know. I don't even know if that is a word.
Like an analogy.
Yeah.
Like you analogize it.
Yeah. Okay.
Or compare it. I don't know.
Yeah.
You get the point. Is like white spots in a painting where he forgot the color of that part.
Mm-hmm.
This movie has no white spots.
Yeah.
There's nothing like that. There's no blank spots, and every scene just carries something to it, and it's a very moving movie. There's
we were just talking about that the other day with a TV show about the dialogue can pull you out of the movie.
What show were we talking about?
It was your mom and I were talking. We were talking about The Chosen, and
I've never seen that.
How they
I've seen The Chosen. I thought it was a different show.
Yeah. How they used more modern language during a part of a conversation and a joke that didn't fit the time.
Right.
And it pulled you out of the depth of the moment.
What were we talking about the other day? Where like something like sometimes when I was talking about like this is more of just when I was like talking with Olivia about this when it comes to movies kind of like The Hobbit or like the new Transformers movies where when technology really started getting better for movies, it turned into a lot of rather than making the scene the way it would look best on screen, it was a lot of hey, look what we can do.
Yes.
So like you want to talk about Endgame again, there's that whole scene with Hawkeye when he turns into Ronin, but they do it all in one take, right? While that scene is awesome, everybody in the movie at some point is thinking, wow, they did this all in one take, and you're reminded that it's a movie.
Yeah.
And
I'm referring more to the needle scratches, like a
really awkward
a needle
moments.
Scratch on the record player. It's like it just brings a movie to a grinding halt when it's something. If you were to pull out a lightsaber in a Star Trek movie, it would be one of those moments. You're like, hey, wait a minute, that doesn't belong there.
You mean like breaking the fourth wall, or like
no,
just very
just something out of place? So in this movie, if they were to use some dialogue or a curse word or something
that reflected the time
that was today's language.
If somebody were to use the words,
if he were writing in his journal and say, this is amazing. I'm glad I'm writing in my journal, but I think I want to tweet about it when I get back home. Yeah, it would really pull you away from the movie.
The Sioux tribe is lit. I think I'm gonna stop by there later today.
Yeah.
What's it called? By the way, his name was Kicking Bird. LMAO. It would drag you out of it completely.
There are times in movies that those are obviously extreme examples, but there are elements in movies that
you know what's a great example?
Sound right.
You know what's a great example is I know we keep running back to this. I can't remember if it was either The Last Jedi or The Force Awakens, but the scene when something that looks like a starfighter comes down and it turns out it's just an iron.
What?
One of the sequel movies, remember when like it cuts to like an Imperial starship and there's like a thing going down and everyone thinks it's a starship, but it turns out it's like an iron, ironing out a uniform. Yes. Yeah,
I think it's The Last Jedi.
Was it?
I'm pretty sure.
I have a fleeting feeling it was The Force Awakens, but it was probably The Last Jedi. But
yeah.
Either way, that's one of those scenes where where it's funny, but now like when it lets you peek behind the curtain when the scene very obviously shows what they were thinking and what they were saying to each other in the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's unavoidable sometimes.
There's nothing that becomes overly slapstick in this movie. There's nothing in the dialogue that pulls you away. It's very true to the era.
They did their freaking
correct.
research. I mean, that's like the best way I can put it. They've really captured an amazing feel for this movie that carries from beginning to end.
Well, back in that time of movie making, they actually had someone that went through the movie as they were making it, and that was their job, was to just watch for continuity errors.
Oh, they still have those, but they're just terrible.
I think they're asleep half the time nowadays. But they would look for something that, like, if there was something on a latch on the belt buckle. So Lord of the Rings, the original Lord of the Rings, their latches on their belt buckles were handcrafted, and they were handcrafted only in a latch that was era appropriate, or that would have been used in that time period. I mean, I know it's a make-believe
I
time.
would say it's a fake time, but yeah.
But it's true to that time, and that's what makes it look right. That's what keeps you in the movie. That's what helps you to suspend the reality, is that it's all era accurate. So if you were to go back, you're not going to find out later that the rifle that he's using was actually produced 2 years after the movie time.
Right.
You know, he's not using an M16 in there. In
exactly.
That movie.
So one thing I will bring up for another positive, because there's really nothing more we can do for the negative of this movie, is something I wanted to say was it was very realistic in a sense. So like what I was expecting the movie to go, because of the way most movies do it, is it's a very tentative relationship at first, which it was, and then they gain his trust, and then he basically becomes best friends with them. And then I was thinking it would either be something that you can't entirely blame on him, but somewhat could, or something bad that he did that makes them like exile him again, and then eventually he does something and like earns it, like kind of the classic movie sense where like
you had it, you lost it, you get it again.
You had it, you lost it, and you get it again.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. That's what I was expecting. So when he goes back and gets the journal and he's captured, I was expecting it to be he's joined back up with them and they kind of leave him back, and it would be something like the wife hasn't lost faith and she goes back for him and he proves himself again. But what I liked about this movie is it was more realistic in the sense where that's not how real life would play out. You know, they wouldn't just make an assumption like that, especially after going all the way back to find him, where they just look at him for 3 seconds and then they assume he's a traitor. That's what I was assuming, even though it didn't happen in the movie. And another scene where it was like that was the scene where the guy took his hat in the prairie, and like a fight was almost about to break out. It was
getting really awkward.
Yeah, it was a super high and it was a super up in the in his relationship with them, but then you see the clashes of the culture a little bit. So he's more on he's more of that hat was mine. The American culture, that hat was mine. It still is mine. I couldn't find it and it belongs to me. Now I want it back. Whereas the other culture is, I found it, you didn't, it's mine.
Yeah, you left it there. You didn't care enough to go back for it, so I did.
Exactly. And then you have, there's dips. It's not just happy, 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 really sad, back to happy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's up, it's down, it's up and down, and up and down.
The movie flows like life. It really is.
It's very realistic. Yeah. Where, and then, what's it called? Hair in the Wind, he finds the compromise between the cultures. He's like, okay, look, if you're going to keep it, give him something in return for it. He's like, look, we all know it's his.
Yeah.
So just give him something in return. And what he give him, like a knife or something?
A really nice knife.
Yeah, he gave him a really nice knife of his, and he's like, okay, fine, you can keep the hat. And all I could think to myself is like, I don't care how good friends of them. Like if I want my hat back, I'm taking my hat back.
Yeah.
But
it does two things. It shows their culture. It introduces him into their culture, and the subtle part of it is showing that Win in his hair has his back.
Yeah.
And is really, he's right there with him.
And
they're becoming friends.
And it shows that he's not the, and he even talked about it. He's like, I always feel anger first before I think about it. It shows that he really can see past he made the logical choice. Yeah, he can see past the prejudices, and so he's able to see into the situation and read what's going on and know how to solve it, to the point where he's like, look, just give him something in return. He finds the compromise between it and he diffuses the situation.
Yeah, where he becomes the mediator that he's normally not.
Exactly. Where it shows that he gets it now.
Yeah. And the gravity of him being there, of John being there, how important it is to their tribe, their future, and everything about them. The gravity of it, he's getting it. It's like, hey, don't mess this up. We need what this guy's bringing to the table.
Well, because there was also that kind of underlying thing where both sides were thinking that the relationship between them had to work out, or there was going to be a lot of bloodshed.
Yeah.
So where
this is the one guy that we finally found, one person that could be the linchpin between the two worlds.
Exactly. So what it originally turned into was trying to make sure one's not going to ambush the other, trying to figure out the plans, Kickingbird wanted to know how many more were coming. He wanted to make sure that they weren't going to kill him while he's at his fort, and see if, I think he said something like, see what happened to the last people who were here, and which then just turned into, we want, they both confess what both sides are planning on doing, even though the Sioux weren't planning on anything. But he tells them what the rest of the soldiers are going to do, and it turns from learn the plans, ditch him, and save my own tribe to these are my friends now, and I want to save them from either threat on either side.
Yeah.
So it goes from two people meeting as one, and now instead of using him as an interrogation tool or to gain more information on the enemy, it's just the fact that rather than keep him around because we want information, it's keep him around because we want him around.
Yeah, he becomes family, but then he ends up becoming their negotiator.
Exactly.
He is their voice.
He realizes
at the end of the movie.
Yeah, in the very end of the movie, and massive spoiler, he realizes what he can really do.
Yeah.
And the kind of
his best way to save the people he loves.
The gift he was given of being able to experience both cultures, speak both languages, is that he realizes he's the tribe's only hope of peace,
survival,
of possible treaty.
Yeah.
And obviously those who've read a history book, didn't really work out that way, but it makes you rethink where you think to yourself, if you could just go back and do that and just
how many allies were actually helping the cause,
strike up a little more diplomacy and a little less progress, you know what I mean?
Well, we like to think we're more evolved nowadays, but unfortunately sometimes we're not, and we break up into camps.
Yeah.
So as far as making this for today,
right, to move on to the next section,
do you think anybody under the age of 30 would go and see this movie if it came out today?
No,
in the theater.
See that's the thing, it all boils down to the same thing. There's none of I can't really say it. It's kind of in poor taste. There's like a common phrase of what draws young people's attention, or like today's audience. I won't bring it up, but most people know what I'm talking about. Where there's nothing flashy or nothing showy to bring anyone in, and even in the trailer, unless you're showing all the war scenes and you're showing all the tomahawks getting thrown and you're showing the negotiations a little bit, all the high intensity scenes in the movie. But then they're going to go in and they're going to realize those are the only high-intensity points of the movie. Yeah.
Well, I think that's why, the Ben-Hur remake, as good as that was, didn't really have the box office splash that they might have wanted or anticipated.
Well, this movie kind of, and I've been talking about this a lot with you guys and my friends, is, both Hollywood and the video game industry, they've gone completely away from being a storytelling industry to just being a business. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you go back to movies back in these days, or you even go back and play some old games. You go back and you play them because you love the story and you love the characters. You watch the movie because you love the story and you love the characters. But nowadays they're using those characters that you loved, and they're it's so obvious that in any movie or game and in culture nowadays, they're just using it to squeeze as much money out of it as they possibly can, and then ditch it as soon as the next trend comes along.
Yeah, it's flashing images in front of your face and not a whole lot of storytelling anymore. And still in the 90s, there were still storytelling movies being made. There were still epic movies being made.
There was still it just reminds me of a kid growing up who wants to make movies and thinks of all these stories in his head and keeps going until he's eventually able to put it on the big screen, telling his story. And while nowadays it's, I want to be famous, I want to be rich, and they do whatever fits the bill.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like the singer-songwriters of the 60s and 70s. Would you ever have a Tom Petty again?
No.
Right? Would you have anybody of that talent caliber who can both sing and perform and write and be multi-talented like that, or are they just writing what garbage someone else gives them, and the uniqueness of their voice transcends because what they're singing is so powerful. That's kind of what this reminds me of, is that same thing, where and you have a culture pushing even further away from that with, I mean, what, TikToks? How long do those things? Are they 30-second videos or something? Is there a time?
On
They're
average,
short, right?
average, they're like 10 seconds. They can be long, but on average, they're like 10 to 20 seconds.
Yeah. So no one sits and records a birthday party with a camcorder anymore.
Even
no one sits and watches long drawn out anything. We watch little segmented videos on our phones.
Well, you see,
right?
that's what I wanted to bring up. Even YouTube is like that.
It's shortening.
Yes. Well, not only that, YouTube introduced like the whole shorts function.
Yes.
And see, this is a thing that I bring up where like I know I'm going to make a lot of people hate me just by even saying this word, but like the game when Fortnite came out.
Mm-hmm.
See, this is what I was talking about with my friend the other day. I'm like, look, say what you will about the game, say what you will about the players, but they played their market very, very well. They made a free multiplayer game.
They played the culture.
Yes,
for everything
they
it was
knew.
worth.
They knew
gamed
exactly.
the system.
They knew exactly who they were marketing to, and they knew that the kids would jump on little cosmetics. And they knew that you see cases like this a lot, especially on the news. A little kid would find his way into his mommy's purse, take a credit card, and buy some skins.
Thousands of dollars worth of downloads.
Yeah, and you have and you go to the culture of like a lot of. Either kids who want to play it all the time, parents who use it as a babysitter, a combination of both. And now they won't stop whining until they get the new skin that they want. And the thing is, the reason I bring this up is, one, to show the culture change a little bit, and two is, you notice how after that, now every single game has a battle royale with it?
Yeah.
So
it changed the format.
Every company, when something gets super successful like that, jumps on the bandwagon. So like when Vine first came out, right? That was a little bit
down the rabbit hole.
I know I'm going down the rabbit hole. This is the only other example I can think of. That's what I'm saying. When it comes to movies nowadays, because I'm relating this back right now.
Yes.
It just looks like I'm going down.
No,
the
it sounded like it too.
Yeah, I know.
Go ahead.
Vine was only 7 seconds long.
Continue.
So that's when you started that whole generation of kids who like that. So now then you've got Instagram. Then now you've got Musical.ly, which was like TikTok back in the day. But then that got like deleted. Then you have TikTok. And now everybody realizes, everybody wants to see like short media.
Yeah.
And so that makes its way all the way around into movies.
Well, people's attention spans can't survive this kind of movie anymore. But if they wanted to do something, I think you could have like a Charlie Hunnam or something like that would be
like an action-y remake?
No, just a actor of that kind of scope.
You'd have to age it down to about an hour 30.
Yeah.
Probably you have to cut out a lot of the extra meat.
Yeah, you trim it down.
You'd have to basically do the basic outline of the movie with a well-known actor who was going to give it his all to really tell the story, and
you'd have to dive deep into it emotionally, and you'd have to up the game on the action sequences and the fights and this and that and all the battles.
So like
it would really be a drawn out version of that. So
anyway,
so that's my thoughts. The only other negative would be like the buffalo. You could see the injection mold of the horns because they weren't actually going to kill real buffalo. So they needed they weren't, like we talked about it last time. They weren't making props for 4K.
No.
Or 8K.
They weren't
for VHS.
They weren't expecting you to see all those tiny little details.
Yeah. So
but,
other than that, fantastic movie, great one to dive back into movies of old and really open people's eyes to the way they think.
And to bring up the final point for like the remake is like you said, this is a very simplistic story.
Yeah.
It's not very complicated. There's not a lot you need to understand about it.
Amazing depth for such a simple movie.
But what that means, like logically, is that it needs to be carried by the cast.
Yes.
And so, like, if you're going to make it for today, you need to have a cast that's invested in this movie. And so, to make my final point, that's what happened in this one. It was a very simplistic, very long, drawn-out story that could seem like it could really go bad, but the cast carried it. The scene, the sets carried it. Not like a set, but like
the depth of the emotion carried the movie.
Right. It's a very great movie, and I think everybody should watch this at least once in their life, unless you're like pathologically squeamish or sensitive, like it'll make you sad. This is not a movie for the faint of heart, but it is a movie you should definitely see.
All right. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.